What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. We're not going to be on here too long tonight. I just had some thoughts that I wanted to get off my chest. I got a lot of things to say about Deion Sanders, man. And I already see y'all coming at me in the comment section. Now you want to blame Deion? Of course, because he deserves a lot of criticism for the BS that we keep seeing on a week-to-week basis. Going to get into that shortly. We're also going to be discussing LSU-Alabama, Kansas State, Texas, and Mizzu-Georgia. Before we do, welcome. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We go live Monday through Thursday around 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. We also go live after Monday night and Thursday night football. We're not just a YouTube channel. Every episode of the podcast is available on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. If you enjoyed tonight's episode and you want to support the channel, go ahead, give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. We will greatly appreciate it. Share the podcast with your family members and acquaintances. And also make sure that you guys go ahead and comment your thoughts on anything that we discuss on tonight's episode. I got to get this off my chest, man. Colorado has now lost 3 straight. They lost at Oregon State tonight, 26-19. And my biggest takeaway from this game, right now, Coach Prime looks awful as a head coach. Now, don't take this out of context. This doesn't mean that I have lost faith in Colorado. I still believe in Coach Prime's ability to build this program up to a championship caliber level. But damn, the coaching looks awful right now. First of all, he decides to go with Pat Shurmur instead of his previous offensive coordinator, Sean Lewis, and that decision looked awful. Okay, the offense looked as bad as what it has been all this year. The offensive line still can't protect Shedeur. And you can blame the offensive line all you want to. The guys who Coach Prime has decided to start to protect his son have been awful all season long. But at the same time, you got to put a good amount of the blame on the coaching as well, because they're not helping these guys out. These guys are struggling, and instead, they just allow them to continue to struggle week after week. They're not adding any tight ends to help block. They're not using running backs to help chip block. It's the same shit week after week repeatedly. And you got to wonder, Deion Sanders, when are you going to decide to say enough's enough and try to just add some extra help in there to help these guys out front? Because obviously the offensive line can't hold their own. You're going to have to add a tight end in line so he can help pass protect. You're going to have to utilize your running backs a lot more and pass protection also. And also, something that really pisses me off is the fact that Colorado refuses to run the damn football, man. It's like they don't care about utilizing their running backs at all. McCaskill, his freshman season at Houston, was averaging 5 yards per carry and had 16 touchdowns. He barely gets any work, okay? Dylan Edwards was getting utilized a lot the first 3 games of the season. We barely hear his name called now unless it comes to him going out and catching passes. The running backs need to get more touches. A large reason why Colorado can't perform at peak efficiency on offense is because they don't play complementary football. It's easy for pass rushers to tee off on you when they know that you're going to throw the ball every freaking play. In the first half, they only ran the ball 7 times. It really amazes me how Colorado continues to, week after week, do the same shit that doesn't work and produce the same results. And he really thought that going from Sean Lewis to Pat Shurmur was going to make anything better. For those of you guys who watch the NFL, you guys know the story about Pat Shurmur. He hasn't been a good play caller in years. His last time calling plays, he got fired when he was the head coach of the New York Giants. He was brought in to be Colorado's offensive analyst. I never thought that he was ever going to touch the play calling during this season. Sean Lewis isn't that bad. I think it's pretty simple. All you got to do is tell Sean Lewis to run the freaking football more. Utilize tight ends more to help block. Utilize your running backs to help block. Hell, you aren't going to use your running backs to run the football, so you might as well try to use them for something. You see, if you don't want to give Deion Sanders proper criticism, then at this point, you're being overly too biased towards Deion Sanders. And I love Deion Sanders, and I still believe in what he's building in Colorado. But right now, his coaching has looked abysmal. All right? You can't go in to these games doing the same shit that isn't producing different results. That's the sign that you're not a great coach. And at this moment, Deion Sanders looks awful as a head coach because it looks like he puts those sunglasses on and he's just blind to the issues that this team has, and they don't really do much adjustments. Literally, you can hear the announcer saying that Colorado doesn't look any different from what they looked last week when they lost to UCLA. Yeah, Shedeur Sanders didn't get sacked 7 times, but the performance didn't look any better. Oregon State was getting pressure on Shedeur all night long. He damn near had to leave the game, and I thought that he was done. And then he found the way to come back and will Colorado to 2 more touchdown drives. I find it really amazing that Shedeur Sanders is Deion Sanders' son, and yet Deion Sanders doesn't try to make more improvements to making sure that he can stay protected and have a long football career. At this point, Shedeur is going to need to be applying for disability benefits with the amount of hits he's been taking back there all season long, hit after hit. It's like anytime you play Colorado, it's an all-you-can-sack buffet on Shedeur Sanders. Eventually, when is Coach Prime going to say enough is enough and change the scheme up? And don't give me the whole, oh, it's too late into the season to start trying to change your scheme. You got to do something because the offense has not been the same that we saw earlier this season when they went to TCU and they were putting 40 burgers on nearly every team that they played. This offense has struggled, and it's been because this offensive line has played garbage. Yes, the offensive linemen that Deion Sanders has are not that good, but the coaching is not helping. They're leaving these dudes out to dry. Deion Sanders, I love him, but when it comes to this offensive line, getting guys in the transfer portal isn't going to help that much if you're not going to be able to coach these guys up and help them improve. And another thing that really annoys me anytime I watch Colorado is the awful clock management. Why would they wait until the last 1 seconds of the game to finally call another timeout? If you're going to use your timeouts, use them earlier. The clock management has been awful in every single game that I've watched Colorado play in this year. And if you want to say, oh, JT, you're turning on Coach Prime, if me giving Coach Prime some constructive criticism is me turning on him, then I don't know what to say. You just want me to sit up here and continue to praise somebody who continues to make terrible coaching decisions every single week. It's the same thing. Shedeur Sanders is running for his life back there. The offensive line is getting no help from the running backs or tight ends, and the clock management is terrible. You're just naive if you think that Deion Sanders is doing nothing wrong and you just have an insane obsession with loving on Deion. Look, we all love Deion. We want this program to succeed. We want to see Deion Sanders lead Colorado to a national championship. But in order for that to happen, there needs to be more accountability with the situation. All right? It's cool to go out to the national media and your post-game press conference and say, yeah, we need to get more new linemen. Okay, cool. But what's the point of getting more offensive linemen if your coaching isn't going to be good enough for those guys to succeed? And I'm really interested in seeing after this season how many players stay and how many players hit that transfer portal. Because if half of this team leaves for the transfer portal, I think it's going to say a lot about Deion Sanders. You see, a big reason why I was a big believer in Deion Sanders is because I felt like he was going to knock the recruiting out of the park. And they had a lot of 5- and 4-star guys in attendance in this game. And if I'm a 5- or 4-star offensive lineman, why would I want to play for Colorado? Yeah, you can pitch me early playing time, but can you pitch me the fact that I'm going to be properly coached? You're going to put me in the proper scheme to succeed? Because right now, Colorado's offensive coaching is terrible. You don't really know who is your offensive coordinator. The play calling has diminished. You don't run the football at all. The defense has improved. But offensively, Colorado has looked like a shell of themselves compared to how well they played on the offensive end of things their first couple of games this season. They started out 3-0. Ever since their 3-0 start, they lost, what, 1 out of 5? They're on a 3-game losing streak right now. Okay, they're 1-5 since their 3-0 start. Colorado right now is being poorly coached by Deion Sanders. It's like the coaching was really good the first 4 games, and now the coaching has just went god awful. How do you go from great coach to bad coach in the span of just a couple of weeks? And like I said, I'm not turning on Deion Sanders. If me being honest about what I'm seeing out there is me turning on Deion Sanders, then once again, I'm going to say that you're being naive. Deion Sanders is part of why Colorado is in the situation that they're in right now. And of course, you can say, well, JT, Deion Sanders already accomplished what was needed to be done because they improved their win total from 1 to 4, and that's cool. But I at least thought that Colorado was capable of being able to win 6 games. You see, you can make all the excuses about you not being able to make a complete team via the transfer portal. That's understandable. But let's not make it seem like the coaching hasn't been the problem. You have to change coordinators. That didn't work. And you changing coordinators, nothing looked different from the offense. The offense looked as bad as how it has looked over the last couple of weeks. Give Sean Lewis back the play calling duties. I never felt like Sean Lewis play calling was that bad where you need to revoke the play calling duties from him. The only thing you needed to tell Sean Lewis was to run the football more with the running backs and find ways to give Shedeur Sanders additional help. And yet they continue to go 4 and 5 wide, which gives Shedeur Sanders less time to get the football out, because then he's going to have to get the football out fast as hell because you're going to have nobody there to help block. It doesn't make sense, Deion Sanders going to the podium, calling out the offensive line, but yet not improving the coaching. Your job as a coach is to coach these young fellas up. Your job as a coach is to make these guys believe in themselves, not shit on them, and then continue to leave them out to dry. Every single time you listen to these commentators call a Colorado game, they say the same thing every week. They need to leave running backs out there to help chip. They need to leave a tight end in line to help assist the offensive line, and they don't do any of it. You see, I'm upset because I want Deion Sanders to lead the Buffs to greatness. I really do. I want Deion Sanders to prove all his haters wrong, because believe it or not, there are a lot of people out here who just devote their lives to watching Colorado play and rooting for Deion Sanders to fail. I'm not one of those people. I truly and genuinely want to see Colorado win it all with Deion Sanders being at the helm at head coach. But you're not going to be a championship program if your coaching continues to be this bad. You continue to not make adjustments. This isn't a program that I feel has a bright future if I keep seeing the same shit that I've seen out of Coach Prime and this coaching staff the last 3 weeks. At the end of the day, your job as a coach is to put players in positions to succeed. And if you are a Colorado fan, can you honestly say that Deion Sanders has done a great job of that over the last couple of weeks? We get that they're outmatched up front. We get that. We know that they don't have a lot of talent on the defensive line than the offensive line. But the defensive line is playing better. The offensive line seems to continue to get worse and worse every single week, and you can only be so bad. You keep saying things can't get any worse. Yes, they can. They get worse every single game they play. Oregon State, yes, this game looked close, but if you really watch this game from start to finish, Oregon State had control of this ball game for the whole entire 60 minutes this game was played. There never was a moment in this game where I felt, oh yeah, like Colorado has a chance to win this thing. Shedeur Sanders is the sole reason why Colorado has 4 wins and why they don't have any. If it wasn't for Shedeur Sanders, Colorado would be an awful football team. He really is the glue that keeps this team together. And I have a lot of respect for Shedeur to continue to go out there and take that punishment behind that garbage offensive line and still be able to keep his composure and not throw anybody out to the wolves. Got a lot of respect for that. But Deion Sanders, on the other hand, man, something has to change. Every time I watch Colorado, I get really upset because I don't see any adjustments being made. I still believe in Deion Sanders as a head coach, but right now, I can't continue to defend awful coaching. And that's what I'm seeing out of Coach Prime and the Buffs right now. This is a coaching staff that continues to do the same thing every single game and it not work. Eventually, you're going to have to make some schematic changes. I don't know what that may entail, but it definitely doesn't involve having Pat Shurmur call the damn plays. Hell, I thought Pat Shurmur calling the plays. I thought he at least would run the football more. Can't even do that. Oregon State gives Colorado their 3rd straight loss. Colorado has now fallen to below 500. And their next 2 games are pretty winnable. They got to play Arizona State and Washington State. These are 2 teams that, you know, they are more talented than Colorado, but I don't think by all that much. And Arizona is playing some really good football right now. Okay, but I still think that's a winnable game for Colorado. Same thing for Washington State. We're just going to hope and pray to the football gods that they can figure things out against Utah. But I'm really disappointed in the coaching display and effort that I've seen out of Deion Sanders. It doesn't even look like they're trying to make any changes. They go out there, they do the same nonsense every single week, and Shedeur gets blasted. Week after week, he's taking big hits. And if you're Deion Sanders, you got to be concerned as a father. As a father, you should want your offensive line to play better. You should want your running backs to block more and pass protection. You should want to leave a tight end in there to help assist this struggling offensive line. They're not doing anything to help solve their issues. Instead, they just want to go to the podium and make excuses about how we need better offensive linemen. How about we worry about this season, trying to make it to a bowl game before we start saying how we need to go to the transfer portal and get more players? That's not a good sign to recruits. It is not a good sign to players that are thinking about transferring to Colorado. I mean, they had a 5-star offensive tackle there. And after the shit show that Colorado's offensive line put on display tonight, do you think he would want to commit to Coach Prime? I don't even think Colorado is top 50 in recruiting. I thought that recruiting would be jumping for Colorado. I thought that Deion Sanders would have an easy time building up this team through recruiting because he's Deion Sanders. He's one of the more recognizable athletes of all time. When Deion Sanders comes to your grandma's living room, everybody knows who he is. But yet, why aren't recruits flocking to the bit to play for Deion Sanders? There's a reason. There's a good reason for it. I'm not saying that Deion is a terrible coach, but based on what I've seen out of this team the last month, he's been having some awful decision-making as the head coach of Colorado. The decision to make Pat Shurmur the offensive coordinator was terrible. Give Sean Lewis back the play-calling duties. All you had to tell Sean Lewis to do was to run the football more, Let's try to play a more complimentary style of football instead of trying to be old school Mike Leach air raid when we throw the football 50 times a game, because you obviously don't have an offensive line that can allow Shedeur Sanders to throw the football that much, because he's getting pressured on half of his dropbacks. Congratulations to Oregon State on the well-deserved victory. If you're an Oregon State fan, I apologize, because this is more about Colorado. All right, you was expected to win this game. You were expected to win by 13 points, double digits. You didn't cover. Colorado covered once again. Colorado is easy money, but this isn't about Colorado being able to cover. This is about Colorado being able to be a properly coached football team. Stop giving me the excuses about how they have limitations. We get that. But things can be a lot better than what we're seeing right now. And if you can agree with that, then you're just a little bit too biased and you're just too much on the Deion Sanders hype train. If you can't give this man proper criticism where he deserves to be criticized, then you're part of the issue. I love Deion Sanders and I want him to succeed. But right now, the coaching that I've seen out of him the last couple of weeks has been abysmal. Before we move on, let's read the chat real quick. You're right. He hear the play calls. He changed the coach play calls. He keep putting his son in after getting hit. There are literally no adjustments in the second half. It's BS. Yeah, it's BS, Brooklyn boy. Like, I don't get it. He says before every game, when they come up to him and they ask, hey, Coach Prime, what do y'all need to win? What do y'all need to do to win the game? He always says, man, all we got to do is to make sure we keep two upright and we got a chance to win the game. Well, when's the last time Colorado has been able to execute that game plan? Come on, man. Devo H has the 100 emojis. Brooklyn Boy says, yeah, they don't know how to use their players. All this falls on Prime. My passion for this team is fading away. I mean, still support. Okay, don't give up faith. We knew this was going to be a rocky season. All right? And I do think that Coach Prime is eventually going to get this together, hopefully. But right now, like, Colorado isn't looking too hot. And Deion Sanders definitely needs to look in the mirror and he needs to change some things about his coaching style, because you can't coach in Power 5 college football the same way you were in the SWAC. No disrespect to my HBCU alumni out there and my SWAC brethren, because I have a couple of homies that play in the SWAC conference, but playing in Division I college football and the Pac-12 conference, which is considered a Power 5 conference, is an entirely different ball game. Lateef Cooks says it's a big difference in talent level in the SWAC and MEAC as compared to Pac-12. Deion is going to have to go to major junior college programs to get this team on par with other programs. Like, Deion Sanders is going to have to cut a lot of checks. He's going to have to try to get the best coaches available and the best players in the transfer portal available to continue to build this team up. But if you're a coach, why would you want to coach under Deion Sanders? If you're a player, why would you want to go get coached by Deion Sanders if he's not putting you in the proper situation to succeed? I love Deion Sanders. This dude has great charisma. But right now, as a head coach, he's kind of getting exposed. If you're new, make sure that you leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. Now, I want to move on from Coach Prime in Colorado and talk about a couple of games that I watched earlier. Now, Kansas State gave Texas all they could handle, but Texas was able to prevail. And you know what they say about elite teams in college football? Great teams are able to find ways to win games. Survive and advance, that's what Texas did. Now, earlier in this game, it looked like the Longhorns were going to blow Kansas State out of the freaking water. It was 17-0 at one point, and then Texas had a punt that got blocked, and then Malik Murphy had a couple of costly interceptions, and next thing you know, this game is going into overtime. When you look at Texas, it's pretty apparent that this is the best team in the Big 12. All right? And their defense definitely carried them in this game. When the offense went cold, the defense continued to find ways to keep Texas in position to win this football game. This is a complete team. They got a great offensive line. They got a great defensive line. And they were working Kansas State up front. for the majority of this game. There was a time during this game for the first 2 quarters where Kansas State's offense was struggling to even get across the 50. But Texas kicked themselves in the foot. They had some interceptions, some fumbles to block punt, and that's what allowed Kansas State to get back into this game. And anytime you give a team like Kansas State opportunities to get back into a ball game, they're going to make you pay because they're well coached and they also are pretty talented. Now, are they as talented as Texas? No. But anytime you allow a team like Kansas State to come back the way they did, it mostly is due to self-inflicted wounds. Texas, to their credit, though, they were still able to sneak out a win. I thought when this game went to overtime, Kansas State was going to win it. But Texas defense had a big goal line stand. They were able to shut down Will Howard and company when it mattered the most. And they remain with only 1 loss up to this point this season. And their last couple of games, I expect them to win. Quinn Ewers eventually is going to come back healthy. And eventually this offense should bounce back to the form that it was prior to his injury. Malik Murphy, I don't think he's bad, but it's just that sometimes his turnovers can put this team at a disadvantage, and we saw that in this loss. Kansas State, Will Howard had a really good second half. They keep putting in Avery Johnson, their other quarterback, because they run like a 2-quarterback system. But I really feel like they need to scrap that, and they just need to stick with Will Howard. Okay, I get that Avery Johnson gives you a different element when it comes to his athleticism, and you can do a lot of innovative things in the run game with him. But Will Howard gives you the best chance to win, and just rotating in different quarterbacks, it hurts your offense's efficiency. Because then anytime a guy gets into rhythm, you put another guy in and it kind of can hurt your offense in a sense. Texas proved why they're the best team in the Big 12 with this win, because they are a complete football team. And they showed why they're one of the best teams in college football. The best teams in college football find different ways to win. It may not be pretty. It may be ugly. But Texas, not just are they good offensively, but they also are really good defensively. And I don't think their defense gets enough credit for getting them to the point that they are right now. For them to be able to beat a really good Kansas State team with a backup quarterback shows you just how great of a defense the Longhorns have. They're really good up front. They got a really good secondary also. This is the best team in the Big 12. And Oklahoma just lost their 2nd straight game to Oklahoma State. We don't even know if Texas is going to be going up against the Sooners in the Big 12 championship anymore. It's up for grabs at this point who Texas is going to play in the Big 12 championship. But you definitely have to like their chances of being able to win out and make an argument for why they deserve to be in the college football playoffs, because they still have the best win in college football, beating Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa. They've dealt with a couple of injuries. Definitely losing Quinn Ewers, you definitely can feel the significance of not having him on the field. He can be inconsistent at times, but Malik Murphy put Kansas State back into this game. The special teams block that Kansas State had was huge. It was 17-0 prior to that play happening. They got that block punt. They capitalized off it. It was 17-7. And then in the second half, Texas offense just went ice cold and Kansas State got back into this ball game. And Kansas State probably could have won this game if the play calling was just slightly better. I don't hate the play call, their final play in overtime, but it could have been a little bit better. Overall, Texas showed that they're a complete football team, all right? They're one of the best teams in college football, not just because they got an explosive offense, but because they're great on both sides of the football. This defense deserves to be talked about way more than what it has been. And I think that this defense carried Texas to a win in this game. I see a lot of people in the comment section saying that I'm coming in and dropping the hammer on Deion because the hammer needs to be dropped. And I get that. Colorado has already exceeded expectations. But at the same time, you expect a little bit more. And you also got to call out bad coaching when you see it. And if you can't call out Deion Sanders' coaching job, that he's done over the last couple of weeks for being terrible, then you're just being a little bit too biased. He's letting guys out there continue to get beat and not give them any help. The commentators are literally screaming, leave a running back in there to chip. Leave a tight end in there, in line to block. You don't use the running backs. You don't use the tight ends, so you might as well use them to block. Help out Shadur. Help out your son. I'm not hating on Deion. I love Deion. I still believe in what he's trying to build in Colorado. But right now, the coaching is awful. And apparently, if he's not going to hold himself accountable, because, I mean, he can say he's going to be accountable and you can put the loss all on him all you want to, but we don't see any changes. They go out there and they do the same shit every week. Nothing looks different. The offensive line is still abysmal. You're not giving those guys any help, and we keep seeing the same result. They're not even trying to run the football more. They only ran the ball 7 times in the first half. That's inexcusable. Meanwhile, Oregon State ran the football, 18 times in the first half? It's not hard to play complimentary football. Why are you going air raid when you don't have the personnel that have that kind of offense? That's all I'm saying. Deion Sanders hasn't done a great job the last couple of weeks. He's a worse head coach now than what he was when Colorado was 3-0. When he was 3-0, everything was working. But you can kind of tell how good of a head coach somebody is with how they respond to adversity, with how they make certain adjustments. And we're not seeing a lot of necessary adjustments being made to improve this football team. Yeah, you can say, JT, they already exceeded expectations. But there's something that I like to say, never be okay with being okay. You should always strive to be the best you can be at anything you do. Colorado has won 4 games. That's cool. They have quadrupled their win total. But this is also a team that's good enough to win 6 games and be bowl eligible. And I'm pretty sure Deion Sanders will also like to make it to a bowl game in year 1. He's not looking at this season, oh, well, we won more games than what we did last year. Like Deion Sanders said when he did that interview with Joe Klatt during the offseason, he wants it all. And I don't think he's going to be okay with having a losing season. Yeah, you can look at it and flip it and say it's still a win because they overexceeded their win total. But also, you got to look at the fact that this coaching is also holding this team back in a sense. You can say he doesn't have his guys, but at the end of the day, coaching is all about putting guys in positions to succeed. And Deion Sanders and his coaching staff aren't doing a good job of that. Georgia remains unbeaten. Missouri gave these boys all they can handle, but Georgia just was able to find a way to pull out this win. And at one point, there was a time during this game where it felt like Missouri was going to be able to pull off this historic upset because it's really hard to win on the road in Athens. Okay, Missouri's defensive line was getting after Carson Beck for a good duration of this game, and this is probably one of the worst performances that we've ever seen out of Georgia's offensive line when it came to pass protection, because for the first 3 quarters and a half, Missouri's defensive line had Georgia's offensive line beat. And Carson Beck, he didn't really have his best performance. But Georgia, to their credit, after midway through the 3rd quarter, this offensive line woke up and they started to get the better of Missouri's defensive line. Missouri offensively, they had the performance that I expected them to have. Their wide receivers were carving up Georgia's secondary. For some reason, Georgia's secondary just could not stop the back shoulder throw. Every time Brady Cook and these receivers went back shoulder, Georgia's secondary had no answers for it. And even then, Missouri's final couple of possessions, they literally were going 4 verts. And they were literally only trying to get the back shoulder because that seemed to be the only thing that was working. Brady Cook, he had an okay game. But at the same time, the thing with Brady Cook is that in big moments sometimes, he can make some boneheaded decisions. And he had a couple of them. He gave the ball away. He had a couple of really dumb interceptions. The Nazir Stackhouse interception, I don't know how much blame I can put on him for that one. I think that was just a great play by Nazir Stackhouse. Anytime you're a defensive lineman and you can come away with the football via interception, that's a great play on your behalf, because most of the times those big boys aren't in positions to make those kinds of plays. All right, but the interception that he threw on Missouri's final drive, which sealed the game, I don't know what the hell he was thinking throwing that pass. But outside of that, I feel like he had an okay performance. But anytime you're trying to beat Georgia on the road, okay isn't going to cut it. You're going to need exceptional quarterback play to beat Georgia. And Missouri wasn't able to get that out of Brady Cook. Yes, he was able to extend plays and make things happen with his legs on the ground. But to beat Georgia, you need a quarterback that can completely dissect this defense. And you need wide receivers that can challenge this secondary. And Missouri had that. You know, Luther Burden was making plays on this secondary. Their other wide receivers had a good performance. It's just Brady Cook in the critical moments of this game where Missouri really needed him to step up and keep them alive and give them an opportunity to win. He came up short. And I don't want to use the whole cop-out that Georgia just was the better team and they were going to prevail. No, like, Missouri had several opportunities to win this game. They just weren't able to capitalize. Georgia, even though they don't got Brock Bowers, one of the best players in all of college football, they still are finding ways to win. And with this win against Missouri, I don't see how you can't say they deserve to be ranked number one when the new college football playoff rankings come out this week. Missouri is a really good team. This is one of the best seasons that Missouri has had since they first entered the SEC. And when they went to the SEC championship game, their second season in this conference. Georgia beat a really quality team, and they deserve a lot of credit for this win. You probably expected them to blow out Missouri. It didn't happen. Georgia isn't going to blow out every single team they play. This isn't the same Georgia team that we've seen the previous 2 years when they won back-to-back national championships, and that's okay. They don't need to be that. All they need to be is the best version of the 2023 Bulldogs team. And with this win, this still shows me that they still should be the front runners to win it all this year, and I still believe that they're going to three-peat. Now, they're really going to get tested next week when they play Ole Miss, because Ole Miss has the best offense that Georgia's going to face all season. Even in the SEC championship game, which looks like they're going to most likely play against Alabama. But Alabama's offense, I don't think is as good as what Ole Miss is. Jackson Dart is playing some really good football. Ole Miss has a really good offensive line, and they're super deep at wide receiver. And Georgia fans kept making it seem like the secondary was still performing at a high level. No, the hell it hasn't. You got carved up by Vanderbilt. Obviously, you had a really good performance against Florida, but Florida just didn't have the talent that Missouri had at wide receiver. And even Vanderbilt looks like their wide receivers may be a little bit better than Florida's. Florida's offense is fairly young when it comes to their skill position. Meanwhile, Missouri, they got a lot of great veteran wideouts on their team, and they were exploiting Georgia's secondary. And if you're a Georgia fan, I don't get how you can't feel a little bit concerned about this secondary going up against the SEC's second best passing attack. I would just be a little bit nervous. Yes, you are going to have the home field advantage, but if Missouri can give you a dogfight like how they did this afternoon, there's no reason why Ole Miss can't do the same. The only difference is that Missouri actually has a defense. I don't know if Ole Miss is going to play any defense when they play you. But even then, you got worked up front by Missouri in this game. I can't recall the last time in the last 2 years I can say that Georgia, for the first 3 quarters, got dominated up front, but Missouri was giving it to the Bulldogs' offensive line and their defensive line. They had success running the football too. Georgia isn't the same dominant team that we've seen in the last 2 years, and I keep trying to reiterate that to people. This defensive line doesn't have 3 future first-round picks on it. You don't have Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. Nazir Stackhouse is your best defensive lineman. Outside of that, you know, you got some talented athletic freaks there, but you don't have anybody that looks like they're going to be first-round material in next year's draft. This Georgia team is not as complete as a lot of people may think. And I've watched a lot of Georgia football over the last couple of years. I live in the South. That's why I'm always talking about Georgia so much. But Georgia fans got to stop making it seem like this team is just completely flawless. Because anytime you try to criticize this Georgia team, they say, oh, we're 9-0. That's all that matters. Listen, you can get the right answers to a math problem, but that doesn't mean that the way you're going about it is always going to work. Eventually, when the problem gets more complicated, the way that you went about getting the answers the first time may not work. Georgia got tested against Missouri, and Missouri exposed a couple of flaws that I think Ole Miss can be able to take advantage of, and we're going to discuss that on Tuesday's episode of JT Sports Live. Alabama beat LSU. This was a fantastic game. I mean, you talk about an offensive explosion. Jayden Daniels and Jalen Milroe were absolutely lights out in this game. This was Jalen Milroe's coming out performance. And this has to be the best game that he's ever played, being the starting quarterback for the Crimson Tide. Like, the biggest knock on Jalen Milroe has been his passing. Well, he had an incredible display of passing in this game. Outside of that missed throw to Isaiah Bond, which should have been a touchdown, but he just overthrew it. He had a fantastic performance. Now, he had 4 rushing touchdowns in this game. So obviously, everybody's going to talk about how great of an athlete he is. But one thing that doesn't get talked about enough with Jalen Milroe is that he's a pretty good deep ball thrower. He doesn't hesitate to push the football downfield. And LSU, Jayden Daniels, man, this dude is one of my favorite players in all of college football. I feel like he doesn't get enough talk when it comes to being in a Heisman discussion. I definitely believe he should be a Heisman finalist. And that hit by Dallas Turner should have been fucking targeted. I know you Bama fans are going to disagree with it, but he got clobbered, man. And it was straight directly to the top of his helmet, man, right in the chin. That's targeting at his feet, and they didn't call it. He didn't get ejected. That blew me. And if you're a Bama fan, it's okay to root for your team, but you also should be fair. And if you aren't going to say that that's targeting, then you're just being a little bit too biased. All right? Be fair. Dallas Turner should have got called for targeting in that game for that hit on Jayden Daniels, and he should have got ejected. That was egregious, man. And they sitting here talking to Jayden Daniels, asking him if he's all right. He didn't look all right to me. There's a reason why he had to go and hit that 10. And as soon as Gunnar Nussmeier came out there, or Garrett Nussmeier, came out there and replaced Jayden Daniels, I flipped the television to Washington and USC because I knew the game was over from there. And prior to that play happening, Jayden Daniels had threw an interception. You see, the reason why I picked Alabama to win this game was because, for one, they're playing at home. I don't know why people continue to pick against Alabama when they're playing in Tuscaloosa. Texas is a great team. You just can't beat Alabama being a good team like how LSU is. To beat Alabama, you have to be a truly great team. You have to be able to play complimentary football if you want to walk out of Tuscaloosa with the win. It was disrespectful to pick against Alabama in this game, in my opinion, because LSU has one of the worst defenses in all of college football. And you just knew whenever Alabama's defense was able to get a stop, that's when this game was going to go in Alabama's favor. The only way LSU is going to be able to win this game is if they could be able to score on every single possession, or if their defense could get them a couple of stops. And at one point in the second half, this defense, they might as well not have been on the field because Jalen Milroe and company were carving up this defense on the ground, via the air. It's funny how LSU takes so much pride in calling themselves DBU when the defensive backs that they got on this year's team look awful. This is the worst secondary that I've ever seen LSU ever have. I mean, they couldn't stop a nosebleed in the second half. Jalen Milroe, you would have thought that he was looking like damn Tom Brady out there, the way he was throwing that rock. Jalen Milroe, after this performance, man, maybe he deserves to be in the Heisman conversation now. Because this Alabama offense, they're rolling. And it's really scary to think that Alabama has now started to figure things out offensively. It's funny how the biggest weakness for Alabama coming into this season was the quarterback position. And people thought that the quarterback position was going to be a big reason why Alabama was going to win or lose, 2 or more games. But they only have one loss. And that one loss came early in the season to a great Texas team. Alabama, people, we need to start viewing this team as a national championship contender again. This defense is all world. Yes, they gave up 28 points to LSU, but this is a LSU offense that's been hanging 40 and 50 burgers on teams with ease. Their secondary gave up a couple of big plays. You had that big touchdown to Malik Neighbors really early in this game. You see, that's kind of my biggest pet peeve with this Alabama defense. They are really talented, and they are one of the best 5 defenses in the nation, in my opinion. But they do have a tendency to get beat over the top more times than often. More times than what you would like. And Nick Saban was really irate over it, as he should be, because there's too many times where this defense gets beat over the top. It doesn't happen every single possession, but in certain moments, like in this one, this game, this secondary kind of has a tendency to look in the backfield and they can give up some big plays. Now, they don't give it up consistently, drive after drive. It's not like a big glaring issue, but against Tennessee, they had a similar play where they gave up to Squirrel White where they got beat over the top. Big plays is just something that Alabama secondary just has a tendency to give up a couple of times during matchups. But outside of that, this front 7 is immaculate. This defensive line is really good. It's really hard to convert in 3rd and short or 4th and short on this Alabama defensive front. They had a really big stop on 4th and 1 early. It was a big pass breakup by number 13. And against Tennessee, they had a couple of big stops when Tennessee was trying to run design quarterback runs with Joe Milton. And Joe Milton is a really big dude. He's like 6'5", 240 pounds. And Alabama was stopping him on 4th and 1 and 4th and inches. This is one of the best defenses that Alabama has had under Nick Saban in a very long time. This is a championship caliber defense. And with this offense now starting to, hit their stride, you definitely need to start putting Alabama right back in that championship discussion. And I think Georgia, if they go up against Alabama in the SEC championship game, they probably are going to lose that game because Alabama looks like the way better team up front than what Georgia is. And now with Alabama having competent quarterback play now, we can now fully say that Jalen Milroe is that dude at quarterback. He's good enough to dissect that Kirby Smart defense because that Kirby Smart defense isn't the same historically great defense that we've seen in 2022 and 2021. Alabama, to me right now, looks like a way better team than Georgia, even though Georgia is undefeated right now. And you go back and you look at that Auburn game and you look at this Missouri game, Georgia looks extremely vulnerable. Alabama, they go up against Ole Miss and they held them to 10 points. They go up against Tennessee and they shut them out entirely in the second half of that game. I think Georgia right now is in a little bit of trouble in terms of their opportunity to be able to three-peat. Now, I still believe that Georgia's going to three-peat again, or I believe that they're going to win the national championship again and complete their three-peat hopes. But right now, I'm a little concerned about my prediction. I picked Georgia to win it all, but right now, I think Alabama also deserves to be in the mix. We keep giving a lot of credit to Oregon, despite the fact that they lost to Washington and how people keep saying nobody should want to play Oregon, but I don't think anybody should want to play Alabama. Now Jalen Milroe is now starting to show growth as a passer, and we know how scary he is as a runner. I mean, the dude went for over 100 plus and 4 touchdowns on the ground. And also had a perfect display of passing in this game. That's scary. Jalen Milroe being able to put it all together should scare a lot of teams. And the rest of Alabama's schedule is pretty easy. Although I'm not going to overlook them going up against Hugh Freeze and Auburn because we know Hugh Freeze is the upset master. But they got Kentucky up next. They got Auburn coming up. I like Alabama to win out make it to the SEC championship game, and then we'll see what happens from that point forward. But right now, if I had to make a prediction between who I felt was going to win this conference, I probably will go with Alabama. But I still believe if Georgia wins out with how tough the remainder of the November stretch is, even if they do suffer one loss to Alabama in the championship game, I still think that Georgia gets in with one loss. It's Georgia, and plus they are going to play Missouri. If they beat Ole Miss and they beat Tennessee, that's a really tough schedule, and those are really good wins. I don't think the committee leaves out a one-loss Georgia if that one loss occurs in the SEC championship game. I definitely think that we could see two teams in the SEC. We could see two teams from the SEC in the college football playoffs this year. Alabama is playing some really good football, and if you're going to talk about Oregon being a team that nobody wants to play, I think Alabama should also be in that discussion also. I wouldn't want to play these fools neither, especially with Jalen Milroe hitting his stride. Alabama beats LSU 42-28. Like I told you guys all week long, LSU wasn't going to have a chance at beating Alabama with how bad that defense has been. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They can't get off the field in third down situations. They can't get stops in the red zone. And if you want to beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, you got to be a complete team. Texas is a complete team. Like we talked about earlier, their defense helped guide them to the win despite their offense going ice cold in the second half with a backup quarterback. That shows you that Texas is a complete football team. They got an explosive offense when Quinn Ewers is really healthy, and they got a great defense. Those are the kind of teams that can beat Alabama and Tuscaloosa. You're not going to beat Alabama being one-dimensional, being a one-trick pony where you got to score 40 to win. With how great this defense was going to play in this game, there was no way I felt LSU was going to win this ball game, and I put money on this. I put a lot of money on this. I put at least 100 on Alabama being able to win this game outright and cover. That's how confident I was about this game. Like, if you have to ask me my confidence level about Alabama being able to beat LSU 1-5, I would tell you 100 out of 5. If you don't have a great defense, even with how great your offense is, I don't get how you could beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Even if you do have concerns about the consistency of this offense. You know that Alabama's defense can get a few stops. Can LSU's defense get a few stops? Apparently not, and that's why the final score was the way that it was. And before any of you LSU fans come at me and you say, well, Jayden Daniels never got injured, bruh. The game was pretty much in Alabama's favor when he got injured. Even before he got injured, the momentum was already tilting in the Crimson Tide's favor. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning into this live stream. I'm really tired. I definitely got to get some sleep because I got to wake up early to watch the Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs play. Shout out to everybody in the chat. My guy Ryan Ellis says, you guys ready for the Cowgirls to take this L? Jalen Hurts is going to go off for 400 yards. Lateef Cook says he needs the depth across his roster. The Juice Alert says, whoa, now JT coming out the bag on Dion. Shout out to my guy, Marshall Jenkins. Colorado is still better now than what they were before he got there. Absolutely, I agree with that. Washington needs to be in the top 4. Got to have one of the best resumes, most definitely. Yeah, he definitely needs to polish up his X's and O's. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to this episode. Before you leave out, give the podcast a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. Helps us out a lot. Share the podcast with your friends, family members, and acquaintances. Like the video and subscribe. And I will see you guys with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.